Thank you to Jasmine Rimberg from the Hamilton Jewish Federation for coming on to the 905 today to talk about this very important subject in our community. Jasmine, thank you for coming on today.
Thanks for having me. It's great.
Well, we'll see how that goes. um, I we kind of been Ron and I have been talking about this topic. We've been trying to figure out how to approach it because it can get highly contentious, but over the last few weeks, like we've noticed reading the press, reading the paper, the the level of anti-Semitism that is starting to emerge in these stories, that it's a very pronounced undercurrent that we're seeing in these stories that are happening and associated with these protests. And I'm going to start off just by asking you, what is the sense of safety amongst the Jewish community in Hamilton? And if you're comfortable in the broader 905 Ontario population right now.
Well, I'm going to talk about Hamilton because
Sure, sure, go
what I
ahead.
represent in terms of, my job. But, I will say that the Jewish community in Hamilton is concerned.
Mhm.
We take, our role as the Federation is to take enhanced security measures. We make sure that all our institutions are taken care of in that sense. Um, if we're going to talk about Ontario, while I'm not involved directly on a professional level, I do talk to friends
Mhm.
and family about this, and I think it's the same sentiment. We can even go beyond. We can talk about globally. The Jewish community is concerned. Hmm.
And I guess that's that's the fine line that people have is there's debate and there's protest, and we've seen that happen with America and whatnot. But this, like, we're seeing Jewish businesses. There's the Jewish deli in Toronto. There was the instance of two Jewish people in Vaughan who were attacked for no other reason other than the fact that they were Jewish. I don't see how this is any more than textbook anti-Semitism of targeting somebody because they are Jewish and vandalizing their business or attacking them. Uh, I don't know if there's really a point to that other than the fact that I think that's a statement that needs to be said and put on the record. Um,
Yeah, completely. I mean, if we look at the IRA definition of anti-Semitism, which was adopted by the Canadian government and the province of Ontario, all of these things that we are seeing on the news daily, and even if we want to talk about people, the way they speak about Israel, all of those actions fall squarely under the working definition of anti-Semitism by IRA.
and for years,
Hmm.
like the Jewish communities have been raising the alarm of anti-Semitism in Canada,
Hmm.
and the like. And right now, at the moment, it seems like anti-Semitism is kind of at its height. That at least within my generation that I can think of. Is it time for Canadians maybe to take just a good hard look in the mirror and say, like, what is going on in our country at the moment?
Yeah, I mean, it's not something that, I mean, I was always aware of this. Like we, as Jews, we always knew anti-Semitism was
Mhm.
there. The only difference now is I think people have been given the platform to feel like it's okay to express this. I
Right.
think I think that's what the difference is. For a while, it was very taboo to be so, overtly anti-Semitic, but now it's okay. It seems
Well,
like, yeah,
I mean, like, I guess full disclosure,
Mhm.
Roland and I are not Jewish, and so when we hear about it, it is from an outsider's perspective of what's going on
Mhm.
within the community. So, and I think that might have been a bit of the it's just you're playing cry wolf on the cries of anti-Semitism, and right now it's kind of hard not to look at it and saying, well, how can we how can we identify these actions as anything but um, and the like. Um, so
Yeah. Sorry, I don't know.
no,
You want me to answer some?
No, I was gonna most of what I guess what I'm saying, what I'm trying to figure out
Mhm.
is you know what does it take? What is your stance on, like, on from the viewpoint on Canada? Is that, is it kind of like a, like, I told you so point of view of just like, we've been saying this for years, and why has nobody cared about it until now? And even now, do you think people care?
I don't think it's really a matter of caring. I think when you get down to it and you show and you prove to them, hey, this happened, this is anti-Semitic, people aren't like, okay, whatever.
Mhm.
They listen. I do find that people listen. It's just, I think if here's how we deal with it. I'm going to give you an example. If
Sure.
someone comes into our office or calls our office and they say, this happened to me or this happened to my child at school, what do I do?
Mhm.
Well, we have set up on our website, jewishhamilton.org, on the home page. If you scroll down, there's a form, report an anti-Semitic incident. Unfortunately, we've had that set up since before the attacks of October 7th because this is something that's been happening for ages. Um, I believe there is, no, I don't believe there, sorry, this is true. There was a hate crime report done, and the most hate crimes committed were against Jewish people. So that was in Hamilton. And so we've decided, okay, this we need to make sure that we're involved in this. We need to be aware every time this happens. So we set up a form on our website, and it also directs people to report a hate crime or any anti-Semitic incident to the police. So there's two steps. Um, and then we follow up with the police. We follow up with whoever. So, for example, if it started at a school, if the bullying happened at the school, we contact the school board. We talk to the police. And as of a few weeks ago, we have a legal task force in collaboration with CIJA, that's the Center for Israel and Jewish Affairs. They have a national pro bono law firm with over 200 volunteers. There's hubs in Vancouver, Calgary, Montreal, Toronto, and Hamilton. And so they work with these victims of anti-Semitism and they create a plan of action or they take legal action. It's the lawyers will take over the case. So we have a system set in place to protect ourselves now. We're not staying silent. We are protecting ourselves and we are collaborating and getting this done.
And,
Mhm.
as I've been looking at this kind of evolving picture
Mhm.
of, I mean, what's astonishing to me, or what seems astonishing to me, is how, and maybe I shouldn't be surprised, and I'm sure many Jewish people who lived through the 20th century would say, "How can you be shocked? You know, this has all happened before." But what seems astonishing to me is how the rise in, I would have traditionally associated anti-Semitism with the right and the far right,
Mhm.
and now it seems to me that we're actually seeing a strong theme, and it was seen in the UK as well a few years ago with the UK Labour Party, of anti-Semitism being something that is strongly represented in the left, in the hard left maybe, but nevertheless on the left of politics, where there seems to be this overlap between uh, non-racial political views about what's happening in the Middle East and what's happening in Israel and Palestine, and that kind of overlapping or growing out of that political opinion into just a generalized hatred of Jews. Is that something you see, that there is this kind of new this new kind of stream to anti-Semitism, or do you think that's just always been there?
Yeah, that's a really good question. And to your point about the political spectrum, I think in the recent years, I've realized that the spectrum isn't really a line. It's just a circle. And it seems like these people just did a complete, circle around this political spectrum. It's crazy. It went to the other extreme. It just, we see the anti-Semitism on the right, the left, and it's we've seen it here. And I see, locally, we see a lot of leadership using really irresponsible language. And that's calls for concern. And yeah,
Certainly, I mean,
that's something.
locally, we've
Mhm.
obviously had Sarah Jama, who actually, as it happens, is my MPP
Mhm.
for in Hamilton Centre.
Okay, so you're based in Hamilton. Got it. Okay.
Yeah, I am.
Okay.
Joel's in Burlington, so
Yeah, not
Okay.
far.
we're all
Okay, great.
905ers here. Um, and uh, uh, so there were the comments made by her that were, as far as I was concerned, completely unacceptable, completely out of line. But also prominent NDP members in Hamilton jumping to defend her. I think Cameron Kretsch, if I believe, who's like a councillor, he left the NDP. He was Sarah Jarman's campaign manager, I believe. There are school trustees and Hamilton Wentworth board that have been saying things very similar to what Sarah Jarman has been saying. That would certainly, well, let's face it, the NDP leadership ultimately said this is unacceptable and removed Jarman from their caucus. Is it when you see like prominent figures like that, MPPs, councillors, trustees, all saying things that are I would consider crossing that line. How does that affect you and your work in Hamilton?
Well, it affects my work because I directly handle this, or I hear a lot from Jewish people from her riding, and they're concerned as well. And this is something that I've spoken about before. The language that Sarah Jama uses is racist, hateful, anti-Semitic. It's vile. It's something I've said for a long time now, and this is something that we have been fighting against. She represents the Ontario NDP, and Ontario has adopted the IRA definition, and the comments that she makes or has made fall squarely under that definition of anti-Semitism. Sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to say, there's, do you think our leaders at all levels of government, not just municipal, but provincial, and even at the federal level, have they been vocal enough in kind of denouncing this overt anti-Semitism that we're seeing on our streets these days?
Well, what I will say is, at first we saw this coming. We have pretty good foresight at this point. We were pretty experienced in this. At first on October 7th, we heard from leaders of all levels of government saying we denounce what happened in Israel on October 7th, this and that. But we all knew that was going to be short-lived. We knew that. So nothing really came to a surprise. Calling for a ceasefire at the UN, not shocked, disappointing, not shocking. But it's like when you have a terrorist organization commending you and thanking you for, calling for a ceasefire, I think that's cause for concern. I really do. And I really think that should make you reevaluate.
To extent, the politics of the Middle East is outside our remit, and certainly outside my area of expertise. Nevertheless, one of the most sort of important principle that most of us, I would hope, hold is that it's possible to disagree about really strong, really important issues and not cross that line into making judgments against a race, a religion, a people, and no, I mean it's very disappointing to see this, and I guess there's another sort of two sort of strands to this. I guess one is, obviously we're seeing this as a worldwide problem at the moment in the West. We've seen it in the US. As I say, the British Labour Party a few years ago had prolonged kind of scandal involving anti-Semitic, what was perceived as, no, actually I don't think it was perceived as, what certainly was an anti-Semitic strand within their membership. Why is this? I mean, when I was a child in the 70s, this seemed like something that was over. This was like, okay, the Second World War happened. We all acknowledge the horror of that. This must never happen again. We must never forget the horrors of the Holocaust. We must never forget what anti-Semitism can lead to, what racism can lead to. And yet here we are again, as if we've forgotten already. And the other kind of, that ties into another element that I've seen, that I believe if you were talking to people younger than Joel and I, you're more likely to come across the anti-Semitism to extent is a feature of the younger generation more than the older generation, that you're more likely to have sympathetic views to Israel amongst my generation and up, maybe, than from my generation and down. I don't know if that's a fair thing to say. I mean, it's obviously a very broad sweep generalization, but
yeah, it seems a little broad. I think it depends who you talk to, right? I think because of my work, I talk to I have a network of young Jewish university students, or, so I do talk to people younger than me, and this has affected them. So you have students on campus and they're concerned, they're worried at McMaster University. They don't feel protected. They don't feel safe. There's kids in high school or elementary school in public schools, I should say, that Jewish kids in public schools that don't feel safe going to school. We get phone calls, unfortunately, daily from parents concerned, filing a report, constantly talking to police, building a case with this legal task force. It's and now this is a conversation too that I have with people, probably in your demographic, that younger people have all this access that you guys didn't have growing up to information. And I'm not saying it's accurate information or good information that they're getting, but it's so easy to just, I can go here and I can find information from anything or anyone, any resource. And a lot of people, unfortunately, don't know how to check how reliable these resources are. So luckily for us, we have a really good network of resources. We're actually opening, we're under construction right now. We're opening a Holocaust Learning and Jewish Advocacy Center that's coming in May 2024. So the whole idea is that, it's going to be open to schools in September. People are welcome to come here. Now that Holocaust education is mandatory in Ontario, in grade 6 and up, we wanted to give students and teachers a hub to learn about the atrocities and the consequences of so much hate. What can happen? Here's what can happen.
On a sub note, we might follow up on you on when that does open.
That would be great. Absolutely.
Definitely.
That is something that I agree we need more education of in our school system. But I want to talk to you, kind of bring it back a bit more locally. You had just mentioned how if somebody calls into your center or notifies you about an anti-Semitic incident and you have paperwork, you fill it out, you bring it to the police. And I want to kind of touch upon that.
Sure.
A lot of criticism has popped up about how the police are handling these incidents. There's a lot of criticism that police, I'm not going to single out Hamilton police, but police in general are turning a blind eye to these anti-Semitic remarks, behaviors, and tactics taken during these protests. And I'm, without getting specifics, I'm wondering, did that relationship between the Jewish community and law enforcement been harmed? The idea that the people who are there to serve and protect all of us, maybe they don't serve and protect you.
I won't speak on, other cities, but I will say that in Hamilton, we have felt very supported by our police. And this has been before October 7th. We've had a really good relationship with them. And I would say that we feel protected and served by them. They're doing a really great job helping us right now. And we feel we can call them and they're responsive.
Well, that brings the other question. Like Hamilton hasn't really seen the violent acts, knock on wood. Well, but I do wonder, like, is there a lesson to be sent here to other communities around Ontario of just, when you have that relationship then with a vulnerable community, this is how that interaction is supposed to work. And maybe a few other agencies around this province, perhaps around the country, should be looking at that relationship between Hamilton PD and the Jewish community and say, this is how it's supposed to work. In times of strife and times of trouble, like this is what's supposed to happen to protect all people from harm.
Listen, I'm not sure. I look, with bigger cities come bigger problems. Yeah. With smaller cities, you still have your big problems, but you don't have as many people, right? So, I mean, I think we have a good working relationship with the Hamilton police. We've always felt supported by them when we needed them. They're responsive. If we have an event, they help us come up with a good plan. If so far we've never needed to
Oh,
use any security plan, but it's been great.
that's good.
Yeah.
It's welcome to hear.
Mhm.
It's a good change of
Mhm.
note in the press. So I am very
Mhm.
happy to hear that's taking
Mhm.
place.
Is there a role in this for religious leaders, and I mean really the religious leaders of the other faiths, and perhaps above all the Muslim faith, the imams, to sort of reach out and say this is not acceptable, whatever political disagreements there may be in the world. This has no place in it. This is no part of it. I mean, maybe I'm being far too idealistic, um, and just dreaming of things that are never going to happen. But do you think, I know in Burlington a few years ago, I don't know if the organization's still going, but there was the One Burlington group, which was an interfaith group that held events for a few years. The various churches, the Holton Mosque, and the various Burlington doesn't have a synagogue, but as a Holton group, I guess that I'm not sure where the nearest synagogue. Oh, I guess Oakville. I guess I know
Yes,
the
Oakville
Jewish
Synagogue,
groups
yeah.
were involved too. Um, would you like to see more of those kind of initiatives, perhaps, to try and persuade the different communities to reach out more to each other?
In a perfect world, I would love that. I think the way through this is through responsible dialogue and education. We always like our programming isn't closed off to just the Jewish community. Our programming is open to everyone, but obviously it has Jewish themes. So for example, we have International Holocaust Remembrance Day coming up. That's on January 27th, but we are commemorating it on January 28th, the Sunday, and it's actually happening at Hamilton City Hall at 4 p.m. That's open to everyone. So, we would love to have a seat at a table we're always open. We want to learn from other people too. It's not that we're closed off and only engage the Jewish community. We want to engage the community at large. And we think that that is the pathway forward.
I guess there are listeners, and there may well be, who think, perhaps we're being too sympathetic to your side or anything here. Well, we're not talking about the actual Middle Eastern issues here. We're talking about racism, anti-Semitism, prejudice, which are completely different things. And I'm not aware of any protests that are stopping, picking at random, Muslim people getting to their homes because of what Hamas is doing or has done in Israel or on the West Bank or wherever. I'm not aware of anything that we can say, well, look, your side's just as bad. I mean, it hasn't happened. This has been the prejudice and racism I'm seeing day to day is being, and correct me if I'm wrong, listeners, but is being certainly overwhelmingly directed by people against Jews. So again, to ask you to correct that is probably not right, but that's how I feel. If anybody's listening to this and we're not being balanced, we're giving far too sort of soft an interview to you. I don't know what else I can say other than this is prejudice, this is racism, this is unacceptable, regardless of whatever politics is going on in the world.
Yeah. I mean, the new thing that we see around here to kind of masquerade your anti-Semitism, sorry, not your anti-Semitism, I mean like the public, is anti-Zionism. So it's like, oh, I'm not anti-Semitic, I'm just anti-Zionist. And it's like, well, actually, based off how you're saying this and how you're phrasing it, you are being anti-Semitic. Criticism of the government is not anti-Semitic, but in the way in which you are expressing it is anti-Semitic. So if you are upholding Israel to the same standards of any other country, that's fine. And if you read the IRA definition, again, I keep plugging the IRA definition, but if you read it, like, that's okay. You're allowed to criticize and have an opinion, but the way in which these people are executing this is completely anti-Semitic.
And I think that's it's an important distinction to present to people, is that, I might, maybe this is me editorializing, but because Israel's a democracy, you're right, you can criticize its actions as a government. Lord knows I've been in contact with Jews who are critical of Israel's actions in the past.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not getting into that on this episode. It's not my place. But what seems to me is that people are using that criticism as a stepping off point, or as a license to say, well, I can indulge in the darker aspects of that criticism, to the point where, as you said, like, we're crossing a line here. We're crossing a line from a peaceful political discussion or debate on what's best for, I'm dare say, the humans, Jews and Palestinians in the Middle East. I don't want to see any lives, regardless of faith, lost. Nobody does. But what we're seeing is that using that debate to say, well, no, I can justify vandalizing a Jewish-run business. I can justify protesting outside synagogues, or following a Jewish family home, because there really is no justification for that. There really isn't. I see that we're coming up on our time, and I'm going to leave the last word to you, Jasmine, because you're our guest, and
Well,
I'm
thank
going
you
to be
very
polite.
much.
So,
Well, first of all, thank you so much for having me and for reaching out and to, be able to voice what the Jewish community is experiencing right now. I just want to say that whoever's listening, if you know of someone who is a victim of an anti-Semitic incident, or you are of the victim of an anti-Semitic incident, even if you're not in Hamilton, look for your local Jewish federation. If they can't help you 100% of the time, they know someone who can help you. We're here to help. We're here to serve our Jewish community.
all right then. Well, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Jasmine, for coming on. And we hope that you and your friends, your family, your community stay safe.
Thank you very much.
And I'm hoping we'll all get through this together.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Yeah.